Chapter 3. Home. Sky heaved a sigh of relief when the cabin door clicked shut behind her. Walking to the windows, she made sure they were locked before pulling all the curtains. Sky needed to forget about all the bad things outside, even if only a thin piece of material kept them from her sight. The dread covering her since she and Dylan spotted the large group of sick and infected lifted slightly. Nothing would erase the fact the sick were out there, no matter how many barriers she put between them and her. But for some reason, the darkened room made her feel better. Her heartbeat thumped a little less, and she pushed away the worry that there are so many of them practically on their doorstep. After watching the sick for a few minutes, she and Dylan had made their quiet way back to the truck. Dylan was quick to assure her the problem would be dealt with, but how she couldn't begin to imagine. Her immediate notion was to leave the cabin, as she had left her own home. But Sky couldn't see Dylan and Wade going along with that unless things got desperate. Jesse had been awake and full of questions when they returned to the truck. Sky answered them the best she could without frightening him, but doubted her strategy when instead of being scared he was excited about the idea of seeing one of the sick. Sky slumped back against the wall and watched Wade and Dylan set up the radio Tom had given them. The first thing they did was use it to reach Tom. Sky moved to stand behind the seated men as Jesse begged to use the radio too. Dylan gave Jesse a sharp glance. "You'll get your turn. Right now, it's serious." Jesse sagged. Dylan ruffled his hair but held his ground. Chipper at first, Tom got quiet as he digested the events on their return to the mountain. "We got a couple problems," Dylan said. "The person outside your house followed us on up the mountain. We took care of him for now, but he's somewhere out there. It was the man you said you were going to check on. Thought you should know that." "Okay, gotcha," Tom said, figuring rightly that Dylan's code meant Frankie and was for Jesse's sake. "How you doing, Jesse?" Jesse was as excited as a small puppy to have his turn and wanted to use the headset. Gingerly, he sat it on his head and held the sides to his ears as he spoke. Happy after exchanging a few words with Tom, he returned it to Dylan. After Dylan explained the horde of sick and infected gathering on the mountain, Tom said, "I'll get some of the men together, and we'll be up there tomorrow morning. We'll clear them out." Dylan agreed and said goodbye. But, not having answers didn't sit well with Sky. How are you going to get them to go down the mountain? They aren't just going to go down the hill in an obedient single file. Dylan chuckled and ran a hand over her shoulder. "Yeah, I know. We'll figure it out tomorrow. See what Tom has in mind." Sky gave up getting answers and used her nervous energy to unpack. However, it didn't escape her notice that when the men completed their other chores, they started putting their weapons in good order. She knew they needed to prepare, but hoped at least some of the infected could be talked down off the mountain. Surely those capable of it would realize they were a danger to others as their condition worsened. She hoped to get a chance to run it past Tom. When he was done, Wade holstered one of his guns and put the others on a high shelf. He put his hands on his hips and turned to them. "I think I'm going to head on over to that farm Trisha suggested for some chickens, like we talked about. I have the makings for a pen. The neighbors are getting thin on eggs to trade and ain't wanting to part with any chickens. I say it's about time we got our own." "Wade. Really? Now?" Sky asked. "What if they come after you? Chickens?" "Oh, I can handle them. I'm quite skilled in chicken warfare." Wade shook, trying to control his laughter. Sky crossed her arms and pursed her mouth as she stared at him. "You know what I mean. Don't worry, little lady. They ain't gonna come after me. From what you said, the sick and infected are up here 'cause they want to be left alone. They ain't gonna start trouble." Sky started to disagree but found herself arguing to his back as he walked out the door. Her eyebrows raised, she turned to Dylan. Your brother. Dylan shrugged and continued cleaning his gun. Wade knows what he's doing. Sky let out an irritated groan and went to the kitchen to find anything to do. Why do I bother? Why do I even bother? Dylan's gaze trailed Sky into the kitchen. He put his weapon down and went to her. I know it's hard, but we just gotta wait till morning to know what we're going to do for sure. Need to see how many men can make it up here and a few other things. As for Wade, well, you're not gonna change his mind once he gets a thought. Best just let him do what he's gonna do. It's how he works out his nervous energy. This is all just. Sky stopped, shaking her head. And I'm out of anxiety meds. Jesse came over and wrapped his arms around her. It's okay, Mom. We'll take care of ya. Sky gave a nervous, little laugh and pushed back Jesse's hair, holding his face. And here I am, thinking I'm supposed to take care of you. About an hour later, the trio heard the squawk of chickens as Wade drove up. When they stepped outside, Wade stood by the truck, a happy and proud smile on his face. After congratulating Wade on his find, they all worked at getting the chickens settled into their new home. The birds complained at first, then settled to pecking at the grass. Dylan watched the new residents for a while before reaching in and taking one out of the pen. He stroked it a few times, then walked away with it. Sky called after him, "Where are you taking her?" Dylan shrugged. Figured she'd make a good dinner. What? No. She crossed her arms. You never made a chicken? We'll show ya. Yes, I have made chicken, just not one that I know. Dylan smirked. You don't know this one either. It's a chicken. He waited a moment, but Sky still looked at him with wide offended eyes, so he offered another argument. Sides, she's older, I doubt she's laying. Don't kill her. Can't we just let her, retire or something? That earned Sky Dylan's laugh. Woman, sometimes I can't believe what you are saying. Look. No, she can't. Chickens don't retire. They work, or they die. That is a tough stance, couldn't we? Sky cast her gaze around as she thought, but Dylan didn't want to hear anymore. It's the middle of the dang apocalypse, and you want to let our food sources retire? No. Sky looked to the ground, tears welling up in her eyes. She knew she sounded idiotic, but she wasn't ready for this today. Today had been full enough. Quickly she brushed the tears away. Look, I know what you must think of me. And yes, my favorite kinds of meat were the unidentifiable skinless, boneless lumps. I know it isn't like that now. But today, with everything going on, could we just do this tomorrow, please? Dylan reached towards Sky until the chicken let out a squawk. He looked from it to her before returning the chicken to the enclosure and mumbling, I guess you just got a reprieve from the governor. Dylan came back to Sky's side. Just to be clear though, this ain't gonna happen every time we want to eat chicken, right? Sky bumped her arm against his and offered a small laugh. I hope not. I'm trying to toughen up. You wouldn't believe how I was before all this. Dylan laughed. Oh, yeah, I can believe it. You've come a long way since those red high heels and lattes, ignoring everything unless it bumped right into you. More than I would have thought. He winked at her. While there's something to be said for the old Sky, I approve of the changes. Sky giggled and looked down. Still have a ways to go though, right? Wisely, Dylan said nothing.